clownery, an act of absolute clown shit, and a very prestigious technique used to piss people off. First known use of the word in 1958. Last known use of the word February 2nd, 2025 at 12:15 a.m. Also known as the day one of the worst trades of all time would go down. The word clownery and the definition itself basically perfectly describes Mavericks GM Nico Harrison, aka the man who orchestrated that terrible trade. Basically the Dallas Mavericks 9/11, he is the reason for it. He is what kind of caused this whole thing to happen, and to really fully understand just how much of a negative impact he has made on the Mavericks organization, we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning of Nico, and then get him all the way up to the point of the trade, and then talk about the fallout of what has happened since the trade, and what has resulted in from one of the worst trades ever, and we're still seeing it unravel, but we're going to be getting all the way to today's point. But to do that, let's go from the very beginning.
My mother was a tailor. She sewed my new blue jeans.
So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of when Nico first became relevant. So he was first, as a young man, before he became a mistake and an absolute abomination, he was a college basketball player for Montana State University. He also played for Army, but I could only find pictures of him in a Montana State uniform on Google, so he was only a Montana State player here. But after that, his college career was over, he would then go over and play 5 seasons overseas, where he played in Japan, Belgium, and Lebanon. And, I mean, anybody that can play professional basketball at least has to have somewhat of a good knowledge of basketball. So that is basically where his connection to the sport begins. But after those 5 years overseas, he would then go on for a 19-year career with Nike, where he got all the way up to like vice president at Nike, and he was kind of the overseer of like signing people to shoe deals, and he was a big part of that. And the reason I bring that up is because the most notable thing he had done when his 19-year career was up at Nike was botch a presentation so badly that it caused Steph Curry to leave Nike and go sign with Under Armour. As according to reports about the meeting, they mispronounced Steph Curry's name, which is crazy because his name is fucking Stephen. How do you mispronounce Stephen? But anyway, they mispronounced his name. They reused the PowerPoint that had a picture of Kevin Durant and not Curry on it, which is just crazy. That's just pure laziness. And although in interviews, he would go on and say, like, oh, I wasn't the one who mispronounced his name and whatever. You were the vice president. I'm sure you were pretty high up in these meetings. Like, you are more responsible than the random guy who mispronounced the name. You should have prepped everybody on this. You should have told them how to say the names. You should have reviewed the PowerPoints. Like, you are the boss here. All the responsibility falls on you. So even in the interviews, he's like, I'm not the one who did it. You are the one who was responsible for greenlighting these things and hiring these people in these places. So it is very much still your fault. So with that being his most notable thing at Nike, you would think, okay, well, maybe people probably wouldn't want to put him in a position of too much power because it seems like he might not be the best at preparing for big, important things. So naturally, the Dallas Mavericks decided to make him the GM of their basketball team, as Nico would officially be hired to be the Mavericks GM on June 8th of 2021. Okay, so this was the beginning of the Nico Harrison reign, and unlike most GMs, he didn't inherit a terrible roster that was awful. No, he inherited a team that won 50 games the year before that was made by the former GM, Donnie Nelson, and Donnie Nelson was only fired from the team after being the GM for 24 years because he got basically into a pissing contest with Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban didn't like him, and he basically forced the other executives to fire him. So, although he wasn't a bad GM, he got fired because Mark Cuban didn't like him. So, bad luck for him, I guess. So, they went on and got Nico Harrison, and we're starting to see that the Mavericks executive decisions, being that the fact that it's basically a big pissing contest, may not result in making the best decisions for the success of the organization as a whole. And Nico would not wait that long to try to really put his imprint on this team, as his first major move was trading away the team's second best player in Kristaps Porzingis at the time and a 2022 second round pick to the Washington Wizards for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. A questionable move, to say the least, because Kristaps, although, yes, he was reportedly not happy playing alongside Luka, and he did have health problems while in Dallas, which we now know Nico apparently has very bad judgment of who is a health issue and who is not. But still, they traded Kristaps, and like I said, they didn't get very much in return for him. And to make things worse, Kristaps would go on to be a very vital piece just a few years later to the championship run of the Boston Celtics, but we'll be getting into that a little bit later. But that was his first major move, and it was already a pretty questionable one. As in his first season, after making this basically one major move of the offseason, they went from a 50-win team to a team that would go 38-44 the very next season. So as his first year with the GM, as the Mavericks, he definitely needed some work to be done. He had to do a lot of things if the Mavericks wanted to get back to being a powerhouse out of the Western Conference. And probably from Nico realizing this, it did result to him in actually making a lot of big moves, and none of them were really that bad in any way, as this resulted in the Kyrie Irving trade, which in my opinion was a very good trade for them, as they got Kyrie Irving for only Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and 2 second-rounders, while also giving up a 2029 first-rounder as well. And that's really nothing, because they got Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris out of it, and in my opinion, that is a very good trade, because Kyrie Irving, when he is healthy, is a top 5 point guard in the NBA. They didn't give up really any players, and that 2029 first-round pick was so far in the future at that point that it really wasn't going to impact them in the near term at all. So overall, if you're keeping track at home on the Nico Harrison trade scorecard, he's 1 for 2. He's shooting 50% from the field. Things are looking pretty decently okay. So it's not that bad. And then the last thing they would do is obtain Derek Lively in a trade by trading Cason Wallace for them. And although it's still in the air of who is going to have the better career, Cason Wallace or Derek Lively, at the time, Derek Lively fit the team a lot better because he was playing alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. So it made sense to want to get a lob threat big man. And although I think Cason Wallace is going to end up being the better player long term, at the time, the trade made sense, so I'm not going to say that's a negative on his part. I think it was a pretty decent trade right there. And then lastly, he made another move where he would go on and add PJ Washington, where they traded Seth Curry, Grant Williams, and a 2027 first-round pick. So since they were trying to win immediately, giving up the 2027 first wasn't that big of a deal. They got a really good starting level power forward in PJ Washington, and they were trying to win now. So overall, once again, not a bad move. So I do think that this is a pretty solid offseason they've had up to this point. And then the very last thing they did in this offseason was right after that PJ Washington trade, they went and added Daniel Gafford in a trade where they only traded Rashawn Holmes and a 2024 first rounder, showing that they were obviously trying to win immediately, as they traded 3 first-round picks in this offseason alone, and they went out and got guys that should impact winning basically immediately. And from the beginning, it looked very good, as these moves would result in them in having a Cinderella run to the finals where no one expected them to be. Now, yes, they got beat handedly by the Boston Celtics, and they definitely still had to make some improvements to the team if they wanted to be able to beat the best of the best. They showed that they have the talent to at least make the finals, which is not something many teams could say. So they knew that they had to capture this window right now with Kyrie Irving, with Luka, with Lively, and all their other good pieces around them. You had to go. And with the fact that they're being led by a 25-year-old MVP candidate in Luka Doncic, the future of this team looked very bright. And to most GMs, they would have been very happy with this result. You made the finals, you have a 25-year-old MVP candidate. What could you possibly do to make this team better? Most rational, normal, smart humans would have decided, let's get some more help for our 25-year-old MVP candidate. I'm sure y'all are very aware why I'm harboring on the fact that he is a 25-year-old MVP candidate on the team. And you would think you would want to get a little bit more help for him and help him push your team over the edge, as he just showed he could make the NBA Finals because he's a 25-year-old MVP fucking candidate. So with that knowledge, what do you think Nico Harrison, Mavericks GM, decided to do in this offseason? An offseason where, let me just remind you, they made the NBA Finals led by their 25-year-old MVP candidate. Well, they decided to make 9/11 2.0 for the Dallas Mavericks, and on February 2nd, they would trade Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Max Christie Anthony Davis, and a 2029 first-round pick. And that event is what is going to now bring us to the second part of this video, now that we've gone over who Nico Harrison is and all the moves he's made since he's joined the Dallas Mavericks, and we know all the context of how he got to this situation, no matter how little sense it makes. This is where we're at. Let's now get into what has happened since this unbelievable nuclear-like event, which was the Luka Doncic trade. So that's what I want to get into now. It is going to be the fallout of the Luka trade. This trade would hit like a nuclear bomb on the NBA community. And to give you some context of just how immediately awful this trade was known to be, in live time, and even today, if you go back and look at the tweet, every comment under the tweet is, he's hacked, this isn't real, he has to be hacked. Because it was that bad, and everybody immediately knew it was bad, and it was so unthinkably stupid to trade someone like Luka at the time, especially after the offseason and the season they just had. It just made no sense. Like, nobody could comprehend that this was real. So everyone assumed he was hacked, including me. I saw the tweet come out in real time, and I just assumed he was hacked. Because why wouldn't you? It makes no sense. No one in a non-stupid, retard, high, drug-induced state of mind would ever make this trade. Even in 2K, my NBA, no one would make this trade. But Nico Harrison had just put in the nuclear code, hit the button, and blew up the entire NBA community for literally no reason. And the trade was very much real, as it would later get confirmed by a plethora of services on Twitter, and it very quickly became, oh shit, Nico really did that, and oh shit, Nico's really that fucking stupid. And what would follow this immediately after just the next few days would be a media firestorm like you have never seen before for any sporting trade, transaction, signing, deal, anything. Even like since the LeBron, I'm taking my talents to South Beach, there has never been anything like this. When I tell you everyone was on the Mavericks and Nico Harrison's ass, coming from every different possible angle, I mean it. Like, there was nowhere that he wasn't getting attacked from. The fans hated him, broadcasters hated him, analysts hated him, even the owner of the team hated him. Like, they did not like this move, and they were very vocal about it. I mean, just look at all these fucking video clips.
Dave, we're just receiving word of a massive trade in the NBA. The Lakers have traded Anthony Davis to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Luka Doncic.
What? You have to get medicals approved before a trade happens. So obviously,
and that's the case for a lot of people. Yeah, now Matisse has had that face.
So Nico, in an act that I can only assume was a form of, in his mind, damage control, he decided, okay, I probably should do a fucking press conference about this, because I'm getting my ass just eaten alive, Pauls, and I need to try to save it, because I'm going to get fired very soon, you would think. We'll be getting to that a little bit later in this video, because he would very much not be getting fired anytime soon. But in the interview, Nico Harrison tried to justify the trade by saying the trade, quote, ensured their future and made them a better defensive team, and that defense wins championships, so that is why they made the trade. In almost every other scenario, that sounds good, and okay, that makes sense. But when you put to the context that the nickname for the guy they traded for is Anthony Day to Davis because he is always injured and he is 32 years old, what do you mean ensure the future? It doesn't even make sense. And then the defensive thing, like, yeah, Luka isn't a lockdown Kawhi Leonard in his prime defender, but he gives you 30 a night, and he's 25, and he plays enough to where he doesn't have nicknames like Day to Davis. And that is exactly who you traded for. So you made your future significantly worse, and it's not like that defensive impact that makes that big of a difference, because Anthony Davis is nowhere near the offensive player Luka is, and he's not even on the floor enough to always bring that defensive impact either, so it's really not like you even did the defensive thing. So what are you fucking talking about? You ensured the future of the team. You ensured the future of this team would be absolute dog shit with this trade. You did quite the opposite. So this interview only put fuel to the fire due to how, once again, nonsensical it made. And you could only expect that because this trade was so bad and made such little sense, it would be impossible to justify it. So that's why every attempt for him to justify it just made him look stupider and stupider and stupider, no matter how you looked at it. And it just makes you question, what state of mind was this man in? What blackmail did Pelinka have on this man's family for him to decide to finalize this trade? And then, as for how did the rest of the season go after they made this deal, we're only a few games into the season. Anthony Davis would go down with an injury, where we're all shocked, I'm sure. No one expected that. And fans would basically riot the rest of the season. And I mean, rightfully so. I would be very upset if I was a fan of the Mavericks, too. I was upset, and I'm not a fan of the Mavericks. So I can only imagine how you would feel if you're... At the time, you thought you had an MVP candidate on your team for the next probably decade, and now you no longer have him because you traded for a 32-year-old who's always injured. So it makes no sense. So what resulted in them would be they missed the playoffs, and they finished with a record of 39-43, and in basically every single game, they had Fire Nico chants. So the team immediately went into the toilet, and they went from a season where they made the finals to a season directly after where they did not even make the playoffs. So Nico Harrison's leadership obviously had a little bit of road bumps, and his vision was definitely not showing through how he thought it would. And just to add a cherry on top of this entire shit Sunday that we have going on here, well, let's just say he followed the Luka Doncic trade up somehow with an equally worse trade. Now, not as bad on a scale level because it's impossible, but he traded Quentin Grimes and a second rounder for Caleb Martin. Now, if you're not a big follower of the NBA, that may not sound like a terrible trade. But if you follow the NBA, you know how horrendous this was. As since they've traded for Caleb Martin, he has played in only 21 games so far, and in those games, he has averaged 4.1 points per game, 1.4 assists per game, 2.3 rebounds per game, and only shooting 25% from the three. While Quentin Grimes, in the exact same time for the Philadelphia 76ers, is averaging 21 points per game, 1 steal per game, 4.6 assists per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 37% from three. Oh, by the way, Quentin Grimes is also younger, and you gave up a pick to get Caleb Martin on your team. You literally could not have made a 2 worse trades if you tried in a 2-day process of a GM of any team. In 2 days, they traded a young MVP candidate on their team who led them to the finals the year before, and then they also, 2 days later, traded a young, great, high-level role player for literally nothing. And on top of that, you gave up draft capital. You literally could not have made worse moves. Like, Nico is trying to speed run how to make my team go from finals contender to not even a playoff team, to not even a play-in team, to as shitty as humanly possible, as fast as humanly possible. And he has succeeded greatly in that task. And to show you just how out of touch Nico is as a person and as a GM of the Mavericks, in an interview, this is a real quote, where he said that with the support of the fans, we are going to continue to win in the future. This was after months of Nico getting booed and people saying, fire Nico. He said, with the support of the fans, we will start to win. And he said, we'll be competing for championships in this season we are currently in. And anybody who watches and keeps up with the NBA in any way knows that is very much not the case. And in the following offseason, after their very disappointing season after they traded Luka, he would get one of the luckiest breaks we have ever seen. One of the most undeserved luckiest breaks we've ever seen in NBA history, as they would somehow, by a miracle of God, he got the first overall pick, and they were able to draft Cooper Flagg. So there was a world where things could hypothetically work out, if Cooper Flagg was ready immediately and was a star out of the gates, him and Anthony Davis could hold it down, Kyrie would come back, and they could have a pretty damn good team. And he was obviously very confident in this, because in interviews before the season, he was talking about how I think fans are starting to see the vision, and he was saying how he thinks they're going to be competing for championships, and players are going to be very happy, and the Luka trade is going to make sense because everyone's going to see the vision once the season starts. Well, the vision's getting kind of clear, Nico, and I don't think you're liking it very much, as we're about 8-9 games into the season, and they are currently with the worst record in the Western Conference at 2-6, and the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Luka Doncic, and LeBron James has not even played a game yet, they are 7-2 in the second seed in the Western Conference. So it doesn't seem like that vision is going very well. This man stared into a camera lens in an interview in front of real reporters and people who know basketball, and with a 1.52% chance won the lottery. And the result from that, after he won the lottery, said, I think fans are finally starting to see the vision. Like he planned and knew they were going to win the lottery. Shut the hell up, you arrogant son of a stupid bitch. But luckily, for all NBA fans besides Mavericks fans, it has still blown up. Because Cooper Flagg, despite having an okay start to the season, is still a rookie. So he has not been able to carry them. And with Anthony Davis sidelined after just, 2 games into the season due to a ankle injury or whatever, he's been out, and they have struggled immensely. And Kyrie Irving still has not played time, and he still has pretty significant time until he recovers enough to play basketball. So it is not looking like the future of the Mavericks team is very bright in any way possible. All while the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Luka Doncic and Luka only, is looking like a team that could legitimately win an NBA championship. But now that we have went over the history of Nico Harrison, how he got here, what put him in the position to make that terrible move, why he made the terrible move, the fallout from that terrible move, what's the future of the Dallas Mavericks? And that's going to be the third and final part of this video. Well, as far as the immediate future, they basically have one hope for this season, and that is that Cooper Flagg continues to develop and becomes a borderline star by the end of the year. Kyrie Irving comes back and stays healthy, and Anthony Davis' injury isn't that serious, and he can come back and stay healthy as well. Those are a lot of ifs that have to happen. And if one of those doesn't happen, most likely the Mavericks season is going to be a lost season, which is saying a lot because of what Nico was saying before the beginning of this year. But there's a very real chance that this team isn't going to get healthy. They're not going to recover right, or Anthony Davis will get hurt again, or Cooper Flagg won't develop how he needs to, or Kyrie will get hurt again, which will make this window very, very uncertain for how long it's going to remain open for this big three. As Anthony Davis is 32, Kyrie Irving is 33, both of which have crazy injury histories, and Kyrie Irving is so unpredictable, we don't know if he's going to be on here for the next free agency, or he might blow up and demand a trade or something. So it's a very kind of volatile big three they got here, especially as far as Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving goes. So like I said, there's no telling if this window is even open anymore, but if it is even cracked a little bit open as a championship window, they have a very slim margin of error, and it may be a zero margin of error if they want to salvage the season. And anyway, but now even looking past this season, say, okay, they missed the playoffs. What's next? Well, Cooper Flagg is really the only high-level young guy on this team. You could argue Derek Lively. I think he's basically what he is at this point. I don't think he's ever going to be a star. I think he might be like a Daniel Gafford for basically his whole career, which isn't bad, but isn't going to raise the ceiling of this team. So I think Cooper Flagg is the only one who has superstar, game-changing, franchise leader potential on this team by far. So their future very much hangs on the back of Cooper Flagg. And while they do own their 2026 first-round pick, which is very important because this 2026 class is stacked, well, the rest of their picks in the future don't bode as well, as they don't own another first-rounder after 2026 until 2029, which will be the Lakers' pick. They don't control their own first-rounder until 2031. So they better pray to God that 2026 pick they hit a home run out of the park, and it is a Cooper Flag star duo partner that they can pair him with. Because if they miss on that 2026 pick, they are screwed for a very long time. They're going to have to blow up the entire roster to get draft capital back. And even then, it's not a guarantee that you hit in the draft. So there's going to be a huge question mark going into the future. And there's so many question marks that it's very hard to say that they have any form of a bright future in the near future. And they're going to have to do a lot of things. And with the leadership that they have currently in place in Nico Harrison, let's just say, don't have the most faith in him to be able to right this ship, especially because he is the reason this ship is so fucked up in the first place. So realistically, what is probably going to happen is they're going to trade Anthony Davis for much less than what they gave up for him. They're going to trade Kyrie Irving to get some draft capital back as well. And they're going to spend a few years being bottom dwellers in the league for no reason because they don't own their picks after 2026 for a long time. But they're going to be bad just because they're going to have to trade away their main pieces that make them good right now, or at least keep them from being awful when healthy, but they're awful despite having them on the roster. But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, they're going to trade these guys because they have to get draft capital somehow, and they're going to try to build around Cooper Flag. But I mean, they wouldn't have to do this if they just didn't trade their 25-year-old MVP candidate. It's just so insane, the situation the Mavericks were in, because it was so avoidable. And by the way, they're going to be struggling and having to do all this and go through these growing pains for no reason other than that they are stupid and that Nico Harrison has screwed them, all while having to watch Luka Doncic probably win MVPs and championships with the Lakers for the next decade, which is just going to be pure torture if you are a Mavericks fan. But unfortunately, guys, so that's going to be basically it for this video. I went over how Nico got here, how he got to make the trade, what happened after the trade, and what I think the future of this Mavericks team is looking at. And it's just very bad all around. None of it's good. All of it's terrible. I'm so sorry for Mavericks fans, but comment below. What do you think the future of this team is? What do you think they need to do? How fast do you want Nico fired? I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button, subscribe button if you did enjoy. If you watched the video at all the way through at this point, hit the subscribe button. You might as well. You obviously like the video or you fell asleep. Either way, I appreciate you for watching this long. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.